On August the 7th, 2011, the small town of Copley Township in northeastern Ohio went through a devastating tragedy. 51-year-old Michael E. Hans shot and killed 7 people and critically wounded his girlfriend of more than 20 years. He was once voted most courteous in his high school yearbook. He frequently helped neighbours whose cars got stuck in the snow. His former classmates described him as quiet and very sweet-natured. He had no criminal record prior to the shooting. Everyone who knew Michael Hans was shocked to discover the depravity the man wreaked on the small town of less than 14,000 people. The horror began at 10:45 a.m. when Rebecca Dieter was drying her hair in an upstairs bathroom in the house she shared with a long-term boyfriend. Rebecca had been with Michael Hans for 22 years. Rebecca heard 3 pops and then a scream. Several people on the block would later report hearing the pops and assuming they were firecrackers. When Rebecca went downstairs to investigate, it was quiet until a closet door opened to reveal her 11-year-old nephew, Scott Dieter. Scott, who tragically would not survive the events of the day, leaned out of the closet and said, "Aunt Becky, Mike Hans is shooting people." Rebecca quickly ran downstairs, grabbed the landline telephone and moved to the porch. Once there, she called 911, repeatedly stating the shooter was there. Meanwhile, Hans, her boyfriend of 22 years, ran upstairs looking for her. When he couldn't find her, he ran outside calling Becky and saw her on the porch. She turned and he shot her in the back. The address was 2389 Goodenough Ave, and this is a picture of the house after police showed up. She said what she remembers of the events was everything going very slowly and not having any control over my body, like I was flying off the porch. She says she then looked up at his face and it was completely emotionless. The bullet had hit the edge of her spinal column and her left lung, before eventually exiting through her left shoulder. She closed her eyes and pretended to be dead. Both her lungs collapsed and she had extreme trouble breathing, but she would survive the events of the day. Unlike Michael E. Hans's other victims pictured here on a memorial bench, she was saved by the Copley Township Fire Department's personnel. Michael Hans would go on a shooting rampage that lasted at most 20 minutes and resulted in 11 phone calls to 911. Nonetheless, 7 people would end up dead. He used 2 handguns to accomplish his murder. One was a .45 caliber high-point pistol that had been bought 5 days before the shooting. The other was a 3.57 Magnum 6-shot revolver that had been purchased from the same location 6 years earlier. Both weapons had been bought from an Ohio pawn shop named Sidmore's Jewelry, located in the nearby town of Barberton. The pawn shop sells a wide range of guns, as well as bows and crossbows. The owner of the shop, Tom Sidmore, said that Michael E. Hans easily cleared the federal background check when he purchased the gun because he had no prior criminal record. Reportedly, Michael and Rebecca had purchased a 3.57 Magnum 6-shot revolver due to the fear and paranoia they experienced as a result of the September the 11th attacks. Sometimes the two would practice target shooting together with the gun. After he shot and wounded Rebecca on their porch, Hans went to the next door house and shot and killed Rebecca's brother, Craig Dieter. He then shot the 16-year-old daughter of his neighbour, Autumn Johnson, as well as her grandparents, Russell and Gudrun Johnson. Then he shot Amelia Shambo, who was visiting a friend and was sitting in her car when the shooting began. Michael Hans then raced after his neighbour, Autumn Johnson's father, to a nearby driveway before killing him too. 44-year-old Brian Johnson. Finally, he committed his most dreadful act. He chased his girlfriend's 11-year-old nephew, Scott Dieter, to a house nearby. The house contained Melanie Bagley and her 3 children, 9-year-old Deshawn, 3-year-old Destiny, and 1-year-old Baby. Melanie hid Scott and Deshawn behind a furnace in the basement. When Michael Hans burst in, the young mother lied and claimed Scott Dieter was not in the house. When she tried to escape with her 2 youngest children, gesturing to Deshawn and Scott to follow them when it is safe. However, they did not leave their hiding space. While going up the steps, Melanie heard a heartbreaking sound. Someone had been shot. It was Scott. He did not survive. Luckily, however, the others were unharmed. When Michael Hans left the house, some police officers who lived nearby were waiting for him. Officer Ben Campbell yelled out commands, but Hans did not listen. Instead, he began to shoot at the police. The police shot back, and ultimately Campbell killed him. It is unclear what caused Michael E. Hans to act in such a horrific way. A short time before the shooting, his sister and his girlfriend Rebecca had discussed the possibility of him needing to get help from mental health issues. Some of his former classmates and neighbours had talked of him having certain compulsions. If he was having a mental health crisis, he was not receiving treatment for it. He had also recently lost his job after the coffee shop he worked at closed down, and he had spent a great deal of time taking care of Rebecca's ailing parents. In addition, he did not get along well with his neighbours, the Johnsons. The Dieters had been planning to travel to a family reunion the day of the shooting, and perhaps this added stress also contributed to his decision. Unfortunately, we'll never know what caused him to snap. Today, the victims of his massacre are still remembered in Copley.